This is Gemara and Pesachim Daf Dalid. Tonight, Shir Shbi Yitzchus for Shem V'Chaim V'Chas B'Nak Yidamir Ben Akir Men V'Vei Chaim V'Sav Shem Sivna Yizidol Sar Baskin Bazim V'Chayzer Yitzchem Zares Yisol B'Midol V'Zal V'Shalei Shem V'Samiv Shavim V'Chan V'Adav V'Nitviv V'Daniel Ben Chan Rizal Yisol Chaim Ben Yehudas L'Baruch Bas Tobia Musa Avram Moshe Ben Moshe Esther B'Sosha Achli Yisrael, as well as the Schos for Zivog Hagoin Le'etel Leah Bas Ita. Slight apologies for yesterday's share. There was a bit of unclarities. We tried to re-record it. Unfortunately, it did not work out well. But either way, let's move on today with Pesachim and Daf Dalid. And of course, if everyone we're going to be posting updates, etc. on the new website, ccdaf.org. But of course, everything is on Torah anytime in YouTube and the podcast. Wherever you like it, you can find it. Let's try to make everything nice and simple so we could use our energies for the learning. Let's pick it up on the bottom of Gumel Amid Beis to read up the lines to the bottom. Yochanan Chakuka Nafik Ligriye. So he went out to the village of the countryside. Kiasa, when he came, Amruleh, they asked him, Chitin Nasu Yafais, does the wheat look good? Amrulahem, he said, Sayrim Nasu Yafais, the barley looks good. Obviously inferring that the wheat doesn't look so great. Amruleh, they said to him, Seyu Basar, go and tell to the donkeys and to the horses, as it says, the barley and the shorts for the horses and for the speedy ones. Basically, they were saying sarcastically, why are you telling us bad news? Says the Gemara, what else could he have said? Says the Gemara, you know what he should have said? Again, this continues the theme that talking nicely, making sure to say things even in the slightest way, not giving off a negative connotation. He should have said, last year the wheat was good. The lentils are good. Again, it's always good to focus on a positive attribute and not necessarily even speak of something which has any potential negatives to it. We move along to Daled Amud Aleph, says the Gemara. Rav bar Achua de Rav Chia. Rav, who was the son of the brother of Rav Chia, Ubar Achte. Rav was the son of Rav Chia's brother, who was Evu, and as well was the son of Rav Chia's sister. So again, he shared family over there. Kisalik Lahasam, when he went, Amr Le, Evu Kayim. What is up with Evu? Is Evu your brother? Is he alive? Amr Le, Ima Kayam, is my mother alive. Amr Le, Ima Kayam, is your mother alive? Amr Le, Evu Kayam. Obviously, each one, he didn't want to give over bad news, and therefore he said about the other one, thereby showing that both his brother Evu and his sister Evu had both passed away. Amr Le, L'Shamei. So he said to his servant, Cholot Slimin Alai, take off my shoes. Again, he was one that asked this information. And then when he found out that unfortunately two of his family members were Niftaris and Nifter, so what did he do? He said, take off my shoes. But he also said, bring my items to the base merchat, to the bathhouse. Says the Gemara Shema Min Atzlas, this story, we see three important dinim. Shema Mina, number one, Aval Asr B'nilas Asandal. He was an Aval. He found out someone was Nifter. Asr B'nilas Asandal is not allowed to wear shoes. Shema Mina, number two, Shmua Rechaika Inoi Neheges L'Yom Echad. When it's a Shmua Rechaika, when you don't find out for a long time, unfortunately, that someone was Nifter. When it's after 30 days, Rashi explains that was the story over here. Found out that 30 days prior they were Nifter. Then what is the story? Then you only are Noyeg Avilas for 1 day. Ushma Mina, the third din that we learned from here, mixes Ayom Kikuloi, part of the day is for the whole day. As well, actually, we're going to see an important Rashi over here. Rashi points out that he said, like we just saw in the Gemara, he told them, bring my items to the bathhouse to show that a Shmur Rechaika, when you hear about something after 30 days, you don't have to do Avilas fully, and therefore you can go to the bathhouse. And we also learn out that mixes like Yom, part of the day is like complete day. You didn't have to sit in Avilas the whole day. We see waiting one little bit is enough. And that's what we see in the Gemara, these three dinim. Number one, when an avel is not allowed to wear shoes. Number two, that it's a shmur rechaika. If it was news of 30 days old, then you only have to wait 1 day. And number three, not only do you have to only wait 1 day, waiting part of that day suffices. Says the Gemara, moving along 7 lines down. And again, we're continuing here, learning out things, what we could see for people's speech. Huda Amar, there was someone that came and said, Doinu Dine. He used to always bring everyone to court. He always say, judge my case in court. We're going to bring him to court. Amr, they said, Shema, no, we see from his words. Words are powerful. You know, we see from his words. Nidan Kasi comes in the Shevet Dan, the Chsev, Don Yedin Amma Kechet Shetei Yisrael. Dan was always in judgment. The fact this person always wanted to bring him to court shows us that he was from the Shevet of Dan. A last story, Ekev Yama, someone used to say, I'm Ekev Yama by the seashore, a system, I'm going to build my mansion. And he kept on always talking about building his houses by the seashore. They checked into this guy, what they found, the Zvulun Kasi came from Shevet Zvulun. That Zvulun dwells by the seashore. So the fact that he always wanted to say, we're going to build a house by the seashore, shows he came from Zvulun. Says the Gemara, 2 dots, 10 lines down, Dalet and Aleph. First word on the line is the Hashta. Says the Gemara. Now we're going to go back to the Mishnah. Now that we finished a very lengthy discussion, we had a machlekes Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. Is our night, is our day? The Gemara, after 13, 14 different questions, 4 final conclusive proofs that are meant night. And the Gemara said, really, both Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda agreed to that statement. They just argue semantic, linguistically, what is the word for night? Is it nigi or is it layla? But everyone agrees that it is the nighttime. So says the Gemara, now let's go into the dinim. Michti, let's see. Bein the Rav Yehuda, bein the Rav Meir, chametz ino aser ela misheishayis u'mayla. Everyone agrees chametz is only aser from the 6th hour and onward. V'nivdak b'sheis. So says the Gemara, if chametz is only aser from the 6th hour, when should you do the bedika? You should have to do the bedika when chametz becomes aser. As Rashi here speaks out, let's see Rashi for a moment. Rashi says that Bein the Rameir, Bein the Rav Yehuda, Defliku Masisan, Barachaka, David Rabbanan L'Raisa, Chametz Inoi Aser Min HaTeira, El Beval Yiro Ba'achila, Ela Mishei Shais, Misha Avru Shei Shais. Pouring words in Rashi. When 6 hours passed, which means the 7th hour of the day is when chametz becomes also b'daraisa. So says the Gemara, nivdaik chametz b'tchila sheish, from the beginning of the 6th hour. The koydem yisur you have your enu, and then you can have an hour to take care of it and then burn it. Why do you have to do and go check for your chametz so early? Now, before we go there, so what's the question of the Gemara? We learn from the Mishnah, when you check for chametz the night before Erev Pesach. Ask the Gemara, when does chametz become aser? At the beginning of the 7th hour, 6 hours into the day. Says the Gemara, so I don't understand. At the beginning of the 6th hour, an hour earlier, do the bedika, and then you'll have time to do the bedika and do the beer. Now Rashi points out, what does this question have to do with the prior discussion? Again, we're in Rashi about 7 lines before the white line. Says Rashi, Divish Lama, if the word ar means day, then maybe that's what the Mishnah meant. Arlar ba'asar, for meant day, it meant at the 6th hour. But now that we know that Arlar ba'asar means the night prior, says the Gemara, why are you checking for chametz so early? Back into the Gemara. And if you're going to tell me, Zrizos, whenever you do a mitzvah, you got to get up early to do it. Says the Gemara, great, niftik b'safra. So check in the morning. Why are you checking the night before? Just say, we all know about this. You do the bris on the 8th day. Vitani, we learned to the bris. Really, you're able to do the milah the entire 8th day. Rather, we want to have zrizos. We want to deal with alacrity. We want to show Hashem how much we love his mitzvahs. Shenemar, where do we see that? Pasuk we just had. He got up early in the morning. So that's why we wake up early on the 8th day. So says the Gemara, if the whole reason we're doing the bedika early and not at the 6th hour, an hour before it becomes aser, is because of zrizos, so do it in the morning. Why are you doing it the night before? Just like by bris we do in the morning. Amar Rav Yechanan bar Yitzchak. You know why we do it the night before? Bishah, 2 reasons. 2 very important reasons for B'dikas Chametz. Hopefully we'll remember this. Hopefully we'll chazer before Pesach comes. Bishah, Shabnei Adam Mitzuyim B'Bateim. Number 1, Chazal were nervous. If we make the din, the halacha to do B'dika at a time people aren't home, they're going to forget. So they made you do it when everyone's home at the night time. Number 1. Number 2, something that we'll talk about more. They also did it at a time that the light of the candle, or perhaps the flashlight, which we'll talk about, is good for the B'dika to get into the nooks and the crannies, make sure there's no chametz anywhere. So that is the reason why the bedika is at night. So why is the bedika at night and not at the 6th hour? 2 reasons. People are home and the light of the candle works well at that time. Amar Abaye, says Rabbi, Hilkach, therefore, hides or Meirabanan, for the fact that we just said you have to do bedika at night. And says the Gemara, hides or Meirabanan, young Talmid Chacham, loy liftach beidna, porta the tleisar. You know what he shouldn't do? Loy liftach, he should not begin learning Torah beidna. At that time, the night of the 13th going into the 14th, you know why? You're going to get involved. You're going to get into learning and you're going to forget. And you're going to forget from doing the mitzvah. So we just learned that this is a big halacha that when the nighttime comes on the 14th, right, to the time of B'dikas Chametz, right when night begins, we'll discuss Shkia, when exactly, but says the Gemara, it's so important. We're so nervous. We don't even let you start learning. You're going to start learning. Listen to Daf Yomi share. Sit and learn. You never know how long you're going to sit and learn for. So therefore, make sure you do the bedika prior. Says the Gemara, "By me name Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Hamascher b'Isach Aveir. More halachas of Erev Pesach. You rent a house. Bar ba also. Very common case when someone goes to a hotel. Common case if someone rents out their apartment or their house. Someone rents their house on the 14th. You show up on Erev Pesach. Al mi livdaik. Who does the bedika? Who has to check for chametz? Al amascher livdaik the chamir dideu. The renter has, the leaser, the renter, the owner of the house has to check. You know why? It is chametz. Because he's the one at the end of the day that's going to have the isser, that's going to potentially have the chametz in his property over Pesach. Says the Gemara Tashima. Let's bring a proof. When someone rents a house, the renter has to put up a mezuzah. So the Gemara seemingly wants to say, so too by us, the renter should have to check for chametz. Says the Gemara, a very important rule. Hasam Amar, Hamar Rav Mesharshia, mezuzah chayvas adari. So many halachas to learn for these 4 words that the mezuzah is the chiyuv, is the obligation of the one that lives there. He is the one that is obligated. You rent an apartment. If there's no mezuzahs, you are obligated, not the owner. It's irrelevant if he's Jewish. It's an obligation on the renter. And that's the reason why he has to be the one to put up the mezuzahs. But that's not necessarily going to give us a proof. Back to our case. What about in our case about checking for chametz? Amar Lu, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Tanina learned to the Mishnah. Someone rented a house to their friend. If before you gave him the keys, meaning you give him the keys after the 14th, meaning on Erev Yontif itself, then the renter, the owner, has to check because he was in possession of this house when the 14th began. If he got it before the 14th, then the renter has to check. And we're going to see many halachas based off of this, but we're seeing over here is that you have to take ownership of an area before the 14th in order to be the one that is obligated in bedikas chametz. And that is the answer of the question. We move along 5 lines to the bottom. When you rent that house, the same case, we just said a moment ago, west to the bedika, and we came out that it depends when you give over the keys. Actually, I should mention, very important Rashi over here. Rashi points out, who cares about giving over the keys? Says Rashi. Where's the Rashi? Rashi says, it's a little bit difficult because it's not bolded, but 7 lines to the bottom, Rashi says, Mesiras mafteach u'kinyan aschirus. Giving over the keys is a kinyan. And therefore, v'machla maser mafteach, nichlas le'la brasa, chol chavis abedika l'maschir, shadai noisa v'reshus, le'vav l'bisha masla b'yayim, far chol chavilav. The reason why these words are so important is because when we learn kinyanim, we never find that giving over an object affects a kinyan. And to say over here that by giving over the key, that makes an acquisition is a big chiddush of Rashi. Taisus over here, right over here, points out that this is not a pashit at all. But let's continue back into the Gemara. Says Gemara one more time, so that same case, you went to the house on the 14th. You show up on Erev Yontif. Could you assume that this house was checked, or do you have to go and check it yourself? Says the Gemara, who cares? Says the Gemara, L'shayle, ask him, what's the big deal? Hey, is the house checked? Says the Gemara, he's not around to ask him. Are we matriachim to do the bedika of the renter? We learned in the Mishnah. Everyone is obligated. Everyone, is believed with regard to beer chametz. Afilu a big chiddush. Nashim, woman, afilu avodim, afilu gedanim. They are having amonis with regard to beer chametz. So now, why is this such a chiddush? Because generally on Dinei D'Oraisa, They do not have an emunus, which is a case that we've spoken about many times. I believe we pointed out. First of all, we can just see Rashi. Rashi says, they're not ones that can give eidos. That calls reason. That's really what the Gemara is going to continue. But again, just to point out, it's a big chiddush. Generally, we do not believe in women and children. I think we pointed out in the past. It's the reason why you can't give a child to do tefillas kelim, because that is a part of a daraisa, but again, it's telling the nemanis of the child. But again, back into our Gemara, says the Gemara that my time. What's the reason? Says the Gemara. Why are we believing these children and the woman? Not because they necessarily, and that was the last Rashi we just read, not because they necessarily have an amanas. That we think that the house has a chazaka, has an established fact that we assume that it was already checked, and therefore we're not necessarily believing the child, but rather we assume it was checked. Everyone is a chaver. We know it's kartuchuvas and meisters. There's certain tamid chachamim. They're chaverim that we know they're going to take off, as the Gemara is about to say. As the Gemara is going to prove right now, but we're saying that with regard to b'tikas chametz, that everyone is assumed to do that. And that's the reason why we can assume as well the house was checked for chametz. What's the precedent for this? The Tanya went to the price at 2 lines down, the base. A person dies, and leaves over a storehouse full of fruit. They were that day picked. And we can still assume they are matukan, the appropriate trumas and meister take off. And therefore says the Gemara, the reason why you do not have to do a badika, because we could assume the owner did a badika. Says the Gemara 4 lines down. How do you know that's true? Maybe this case is different because these people said, you're bringing me a proof that we can assume chazaka, everyone has their chametz checked. What do you mean? Maybe this case is different because the woman and the child are sitting here saying that they checked. Says Mara, what? Though the words of this child, does it have any substance? We don't have any monamonis. There's no believable and credibility to their words. So that's not going to add anything. Elamai, what are you going to tell me? So it must be that as a chazal can establish fact that they checked it. But 1 second, what do the Brisa say? They're all believed. Says the Gemara, it's the wrong words. When I move into that house in Erev Pesach, the reason I don't have to do a bedika has nothing to do with the woman and child telling me it was a bedika. Rather is why? Because of the chazaka. So why does the Brisa say hakol? Why does the Brisa say hakol nemanim? Elamai, what must the reason mean? Because of what these people said. But if these people didn't say anything, who's these people, the child and the woman? Then they would not have a believability. So now the Gemara flips it on its head. It's all somehow connected to the child. So Tiv Shabineh, we can prove the other way. That house does not have a chazaka of baduk. Because if it would have a chazaka that it was checked, then we would assume it's good even without the words of the child and the woman. Says the Gemara, no proof. Really, I'll tell you that it does have the chazaka that it was checked. The opposite. You know this guy did not do a bedika. What happens? You walk in there of Yontif thinking, okay, I'm going to have to do the bedika. And then there's a woman and there's a child standing there and they say, you know what? You're wrong. But Kinu, the guy did a bedika. Now we're messed up. What do we do? On one hand, we have a chazaka. He didn't do a bedika. On the other hand, we have a child and a woman saying he did a bedika. We know the child and woman does not have an emanis. What do we do? So the time I would have thought, Rabbanon, I would have thought the woman and the child do not have an emanus. Kamash Malan, this is the chedish. Kivan de bedikas chametz b'drabanan. Which I'm sure this is bothering people when I spoke in the bottom of Amid Aleph and I said something about tefillas kelim being a daraisa, and I'm sure everyone was screaming at their screens, but bedikas chametz is the drabanan. Says the Gemara, Kivan de bedikas chametz b'drabanan. No, why? The midaraisa. These are all such important words that we're going to come back to throughout the Masechta. Midaraisa bebita ba'al masagila. Midaraisa, you want to fulfill your biblical obligation. You get up, you make all your chametz null and void, and that's all. You don't have to do anything anything else. However, the Rabbanan came along and said you have to do a batika. Hemnu Rabbanan b'Rabbanan. Therefore, the Rabbanan, since they created this whole chiyuv, they created the whole reason to check in the first place, they are allowed to say that the woman and the child has a nemanus. Let's move along. Ibayi lahu. That is the end of the Gemara. So to make a long story short, why did this woman and child have a believability? The case is really we have a chazaka that it was not checked. They say it is checked. The reason you could go with them, why? Is because the din derabanan, they have an emanus. Ibayilu says the Gemara, Hamascher b'Yisrael, b'Cheskas badak. You rent a house. You assume I'm showing up on Erev Yantif. The house is going to be cleaned. You know what happens? Umatzah sheni badak. You walk in, there's bread everywhere. They just had a party. So Mahu, what's the din? Am I allowed to go to the owner, call him up, Erev Yantif, saying, I'm out of here. I am not paying you for this house. I am leaving. Why are you leaving? Because I wanted a clean house. It's not clean. Are you allowed to say that? We know you're not allowed to say mekach in anything. It has to be to assume something that you're really assuming you're getting this, and you got a lemon. Then you say, I'm backing out. It wasn't a valid sale. So what is the story with a house that was not checked in Erev Yantif? Tashma says Gemara Dam Rabbi, needless to say, in a place where you do not pay someone to clean your house, people do it for free. Ubadku, I'm sorry, said for sure you can't say mekach. If you don't charge someone to clean and check the house, then what am I saying mekach tais? I want to do a mitzvah with yourself. We assume the nichlel and you should do a mitzvah on your own. So why are you complaining? You must be complaining because of something else. You don't like the water pressure. You don't like that the bathrooms weren't clean enough. Nothing to do with chametz. You're just trying to blame it on chametz. Says the Gemara, you can't do that. Why? Because we assume if it's a place that you don't normally pay to check, then we assume that you're happy to do the mitzvah. Says Abayi, but elafilu ba'asa the yave grow the badku. Even in a place that they generally do pay someone. You would think if I generally pay someone to check the house and I show up and it's not checked, I would assume that this is something we pay for. No, still not. Therefore, I'll never be allowed to back out because we always assume there's some ulterior motive pushing him, and that is the reason why he's complaining, but not necessarily because of the chametz. Let's start the next Gemara. We're not going to finish it, but let's just begin. Today, now let's learn to the Mishnah. This goes back what we mentioned before, that when you have not allowed to eat chametz midaraisa at the beginning of the 7th hour, which is 6 hours into the day. Says Rameir, so you're allowed to eat kol chametz the whole 5th hour. And you start burning at the beginning of the 6th hour. Then by the time the 7th hour comes, it's all gone. Rav Yehuda, no. Kol arba, you eat the 4th hour. Kol chametz, the 5th hour, everything is in limbo. You burn it at the beginning of the 6th hour. Says Gemara, let's dissect this. Let's start slowly. Where do we know that chametz is asur from the beginning of the 6th hour, which we know is the 7th hour, which is hour number 7. For 7 days you can't find leaven in your house. What's the case? That we include the 14th day for beer. 14th day is the day that you're going to have to get rid of your chametz, and that's what we're thinking right now. That's the reason why you're going to have to, that everyone is going to agree that you're going to have to burn it. You're going to have to get rid of your chametz before the actual time of the beer. And really, we're going to have to, this is going to become more clear as we go into the next stuff, which is going to go extensively into the time of burning.